I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts, you have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Robert Sullivan. Be sure to watch my films, Occult Louisiana, available on Tubi, Roku channel, and multiple streaming platforms. Doors of Perception is available on Amazon Prime, soon to be on the other streaming platforms as well. We are booking guests for October. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Visit our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. It's the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some of your favorite podcasts and content creators. Today I want to welcome back to the show Robert Sullivan. He is a Freemason, attorney, philosopher, historian, lay theologian, writer, mystic, radio, TV, podcast personality, best-selling author, and CEO. Robert, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm very well, Chris. Thanks again for having me on Forbidden News Knowledge, or this wonderful podcast you have. Thank you for having me on. It's my pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you back. Like we were saying before, it's been a while since you've been on. Today we're going to be discussing some of your latest work, decoding occult and esoteric symbolism in cinema. You've done some incredible work, and you've been doing this for a very long time. There's a lot we could dissect, but before we do, like I said, it's been a while. Remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more about you.
Certainly. So my name is Robert Sullivan, and I'm the author of 5 books. I've been podcasting now for going on 12 years. The first book came out in 2012, so good grief, this is almost 13 years ago. In fact, it was released in August of 2012, so it has been almost 13 years, almost to the day. The 5 books are The Royal Arch of Enoch, which is about esoteric Freemasonry. Then I have 3 movie books, Cinema Symbolisms 1, 2, and 3, which is about occult themes, tropes, symbolism in popular cinema. And then I have a work of fiction called A Pact with the Devil. I am currently working on Cinema Symbolism 4, which is nearing completion, and Cinema Symbolism Oz, which is going to be all about the Wizard of Oz. I've talked about this before, but Cinema Symbolism 4 really focuses a lot back onto the Wizard of Oz. And just some other things going on. And again, if you're interested in what I'm saying, my website, the easiest place to find me, I do not have any social media, so my website is it. It's my name, which is www.robertwsullivan4. My name is Robert W. Sullivan IV, so it's the number 4.com. www.robertwsullivan4.com. Links to buy the books, they're on all the formats, the ebook or the paperback. Information about me, a biography, podcast that I've done or about to do. This one will be posted there once it's put on YouTube or Rumble. And again, just very easy site to navigate. Information about me. I have a blog. I update it pretty routinely. So again, just go there for more information about me. www.robertwsullivan4.com.
Excellent. Let's start with what got you interested in looking into the esoteric symbolism in films.
So sure, that goes back really to when I was a child almost. I was born in 1971, so of course, growing up, episodes 4, 5, and 6, Star Wars was a pretty big influence on my life. I saw all of those in the theater, and it really was later in high school in the late 80s that you come to discover that those movies, especially the first Star Wars, is essentially ancient mythology just rebranded, with Luke Skywalker being the solar hero, Princess Leia representing the moon. You have all the archetypes there, the villain, the Mephistophelian character, Darth Vader. And this, of course, all comes out of the work of Joseph Campbell. So that's really kind of what got me started in this, and just taking a little deeper look at cinema and how pop culture was really including these esoteric themes, ancient religions, mythologies, and then even on some levels, very deep and darker things, alchemy, Gnosticism. Movies can be somewhat predictive. I have several theories on that where they seem to be able to predict the future. That's an interesting conversation. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started on it. And in my first book, which was The Royal Arch, I ended that book talking about Masonic and Enochic symbolism in film. Some of the movies I talked about was, of course, the National Treasure movies, The Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp, Excalibur, the John Boorman movie, very solar, Enochic, Masonic movies. And of course, this parlayed into my next 3 movie books where I just continued on with this theme instead of going into Masonic or solar, themes or icons. We got into Gnosticism or mythology or, just numerology, numbers being used in movies, repetition, things of that nature. So that's how it all got created and basically started.
As you mentioned, there are many different kinds of esoteric symbolism we can see in films. We have that which is supposed to be baked in. It's part of the plot. It's part of the story. Then we have these other subtle symbols and themes that come up that many people won't even really notice. You have to be somewhat initiated to see the occult symbolism and meaning behind some of these things. But when it comes to those things that are baked in that seem to be very deep and symbolic, do you think that this is intentionally put in there through a top-down type of hierarchical system, meaning there's someone at a high level that requested this symbol be put here at this time for this reason, or is it more along the lines of synchromysticism, where the producer, director, or writer is getting downloads of information, or they are pulling from the ether, and this is somehow connected, and it can be linked with, like you said, predictive programming or other types of symbolism? How do you think this gets put into these films?
The answer is there is no one answer. The answer is there is no one answer. It is all of that. It can be intentional. It can be accidental. It can be the director. I mean, you look at some of the stuff with Kubrick.
Right.
There's no question that stuff is not placed there intentionally. Same with Darren Aronofsky. Movies like Black Swan. I mean, some things in there that are obviously very, very intentional. And a lot of it, like you said, the deeper baked in stuff. The idea is your conscious mind doesn't pick up on it, but the subconscious does. So that's what they're appealing to, what you're not even aware of. And again, this types into archetypal imagery, tropes, the archetypes, things of that nature. So the answer is there's no one answer. It can be, being placed in by the director intentionally, depending on the sophistication of the movie maker. Like for example, one of the examples I always give is when you're talking about like Gnostic movies, one of the greatest, if not the greatest example of the demiurge character in creating, ever appearing in film, this may come as a surprise, is Bela Lugosi in the Ed Wood movie, Glen or Glenda. Now, I can tell you right now that Ed Wood probably knew less than nothing about Gnosticism. And yet there it is. I mean, there is like one of the prime examples of the demiurgic creator in film with Lugosi. So again, this was probably somewhat more like coming out of the collective unconscious almost at that point with Wood. But again, it depends on the sophistication of the filmmaker. And then there is also an element that I believe is somewhat is coming out of the supernatural realm. And then there is elements of like what Jung talked about with the collective unconscious. And is this working in reverse? Movies are creative expressions. And by creating a film, are you somehow tapping into, like you said, the ether and maybe even putting things into your movies that you're not even aware of? Very possible. I mean, obviously, cinema is arguably the greatest medium ever created for entertainment purposes. So the answer I've always found is there's no one answer to it. You just have to look at the movie and kind of break it down from there.
Since you mentioned The Wizard of Oz earlier, I know you have done a lot of work with this, and it's resurfacing in your new book. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've picked apart here.
So sure, The Wizard of Oz was a movie that I actually took on in my very first movie book, which I'm in the process of doing another edition of. But with The Wizard of Oz, the guy who wrote it was L. Frank Baum, and Baum was a member of Blavatsky's Theosophy Society. And when you're looking at The Wizard of Oz, it encodes several things, and you actually see this in the film. It is obviously, on its surface, just a story about a girl who goes to this magical land, has an adventure, and goes home. That's the base story of it. And of course, from there, you can easily see that The Wizard of Oz is coming out of the world of Lewis Carroll. I mean, you can clearly see parallels with The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland. I mean, they're all but the exact same story. With The Wizard of Oz, what Baum did was he encoded a political layer underneath, where this movie is symbolically documenting essentially the political, socio-economic life of the late 19th century, where the Wizard of Oz is, of course, the 25th president, William McKinley. You have things like the Yellow Brick Road, which is the gold standard, which leads to Emerald City. It's green because it represents green dollar bills, greenbacks. The Tin Man is the American laborer. The Scarecrow is the American farmer. The Cowardly Lion is McKinley's political opponents, William Jennings Bryan and Eugene Debs, who are all bark and no bite. Of course, William Jennings Bryan was a teetotaler, which means he didn't drink alcohol. And this is, of course, where the dog's name comes from, Toto. So you have the political allegory, but then also you have the Blavatsky Gnostic influence, where it's this girl who goes to this magical land, has this adventure, and she comes to know herself. She has her Gnostic epiphany. This is the entire purpose of the mystery schools, was to come to know thyself. And Dorothy Gale, it is to know that there is no place like home. That is her Gnostic awakening. So that's, in a nutshell, and I like The Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's without question the ultimate American fairy tale. But there's also something very peculiar going on with this movie. And this is really the subject of my next book. This takes pretty much center stage of Cinema Symbolism 4, which is, I'm happy to say, is wrapping up. Excellent. I only have one more chapter left to write, and I have the conclusion, and that is it. Now I still have to edit it, and I still have to format it, which is no easy feat, I assure you. But that will come out. And I've made up my mind, I'm just going to do a book just strictly on The Wizard of Oz, because there's just so much information. But in a nutshell, there is this, and I have been looking at this thing now for going on 2.5 years. And I can tell you this, there is no question this is not happening, because the evidence is just too overwhelming. But there is this killing curse, death curse surrounding this movie that ties into the precession of the equinoxes. This is, of course, the Platonic year. The Mayans called this the Bactunes, with the changeover from the age of Pisces to Aquarius, which is we are going through right now. Aleister Crowley, the famous Masonic occultist, ceremonial magician, Golden Dawner, wrote about this extensively. And he gives in his work what I would describe as like a roadmap as to when you will start seeing this thing coming into play, when you'll see Aquarius basically becoming more and more prevalent, especially the social norms and mores of Aquarius, and Pisces starts to begin to fade out of the picture. What is interesting about Crowley is he gives a series of numbers, this series of Kabbalistic numbers, and he identifies the New Age sun god as Oz, O-Z. And he gives this entity a number, and the number is 77. And if he identifies this sun god as, of course, for the age of Aquarius, it's the goat of Mendes. It's of course the Baphomet symbol drawn by Eliphas Levi. And Crowley sort of gives a roadmap of this gematria of when you will start seeing things appearing in the 20th century, and these numbers being linked to a lot of these events, and you can document it. But what is so interesting about Crowley's gematria is there's no evidence Crowley was aware of this. A lot of his numbers, many of them, sync to the Wizard of Oz movie. So what makes it so strange is when you start seeing these events playing out in real time in front of you, and you'll see these numbers manifesting, whether it's the Kennedy assassination, whether it's 9/11, the death of Princess Diana, the assassination of Robert Kennedy. buried in there will always be some sort of little Wizard of Oz illusion, and it's very macabre. It's very creepy to look at. The other thing that I'm absolutely convinced of is because these numbers only appear with death and destruction. If it was just the numbers appearing, I'd say, okay, this is Crowley. But what makes this so unusual is it is around all these tragic events like 9/11 or the Kennedy assassination, or like I said, the Princess Diana death back in '97. And I'm convinced that somewhere along the line in the late 19th century, there must have been some sort of death curse placed on L. Frank Baum by Native American Indians. Because and the reason I say that, I can't document it, but the reason I say that is because Baum in the late 19th century called for the genocide of all Native Americans. But here's what is strange that I think happened. I don't think the curse kind of latched onto Baum. I think it somehow latched onto his books. And essentially this curse didn't start to become kinetic, didn't start to become active. You really start to see it coming into play in the year 1939. When this movie starts to go into production. Of course, I'm referring to The Wizard of Oz. That's when the blank starts hitting the fan, as it were, and this dark energy takes over, designating the age of Aquarius, saying goodbye to the age of Pisces, where essentially this new age sun god is taking over, and in all these tragedies, you will see the sequencing of numbers turning up, identifying this sun god as basically being pervasive at this point in time. Crowley gives a lot of hallmarkers on this. The fact that it's surrounded by death and destruction is somewhat unsurprising, because he does say that the god is a bloodthirsty monster. But again, if you look at Crowley's gematria, what is so peculiar about it is a lot of it does sync to the Wizard of Oz. So when you're looking at these events, you will always see these little Wizard of Oz illusions buried in the event. Very macabre, very dark, and very mysterious.
Wow, and you said that this entity was the goat of Mendes?
Right. So based on the precession of the equinox, the sun adopts the characteristics of the sign it is in for the next 2,000 years. So, of course, the last 2,000 years, the sun has been in the age of Pisces. It's been in this constellation of Pisces. And, of course, the sun god for that is easy to spot. It's Jesus Christ, who is, of course, not a real person. He's just a personification of Pisces, the fish, washing the feet. Pisces rules the feet, hangs around with 12 people. The 12 houses of the zodiac is the fisher of men, Pisces, feeds people with 2 fishes, Pisces. All his followers are fishermen, again, Pisces. His virgin mother is, of course, Virgo, which is the opposite house of Pisces. Again, Holy Bible, Old and New Testament, nothing more than astrology. Crowley was completely aware of this. And what Crowley says is the sun leaves Pisces eventually. And what happens is when the sun gets out of Pisces, these old age religions, they don't essentially get extinguished, but they fade into the background. And you're seeing this now. You're seeing the downplay of Christianity and Judaism and Islam. And one of the things that Crowley says directly in his books, he says, is when this new age sun god, basically when Christ is being dethroned and the goat of Mendes is being exalted, he said one of the things that you're going to see coming out, he said, and this is a hallmarker of this, he said, is what is called transgenderism.
Oh, wow.
He said this is where you start to see men acting like women and women acting like men. He says when you see that Christ is dethroned, the goat of Mendes is ruling. He doesn't use the word transgenderism because back 120 years ago, that word was not available to him. But what he uses words like epicene or androgynous. Those are the words you will constantly hear from him. And the other hallmarker he gives is environmentalism. He says there will be a cult of people who are obsessed with the earth and the well-being of the earth. He said, when you start seeing these two things taking place, again, we're exiting Pisces and going into Aquarius, and it syncs perfectly. So again, this is really the subject of my next book, which is Cinema Symbolism 4. But I've also made up my mind that I'm going to do an entire Wizard of Oz book with all the political allegories, all the Kabbalistic and Gnostic allegories, and then even going further with this Aleister Crowley precession of the equinox death curse. And again, it's by far and away, I can tell you this right now. I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, the Royal Arch of Enoch, all the Masonic symbolism, the Book of Enoch, the movie symbolism, movies like The Matrix or Star Wars or Black Swan or The Shining. I mean, as great as all of this is, this thing puts all this thing puts this stuff in the back seat. I mean, this is by far and away the most fascinating thing I've ever examined in my whole life, and it never ceases to blow me away.
So this curse, the way you describe it, it somewhat seems like it could be a cycle, a natural cycle that's occurring, but you believe it could also be a curse that was put forward by Native Americans.
Well, it's a combination of both,
okay.
I believe, because let me put it like this: if it was just the numbers, I would be willing to accept that this is some sort of Crowley, but because this thing is so acutely tied to death and destruction, there must be some sort of death mechanism behind it. And I believe that this curse never latched onto Baum or his family, but instead somehow through some sort of supernatural osmosis, I guess that's the only way I can describe it, latched onto his books instead. Wow. Because the books and the movie sync with Crowley. And again, whenever you're looking at these terror incidents, whether it be World War II, and you sync it with Crowley's gematria, it all goes back to the Wizard of Oz. And again, it is by far and away the most fascinating thing I've ever examined in my life, without question. And again, there are a couple things, I can't tell you what they are. I'm sitting on this right now. I'm sitting on a lot of it. But there are a couple things I can tell you that if I told you, you would have no doubt about this. I mean, if you read the book, you will have no question, 100% that this isn't happening.
Speaking of curses, I heard you also mention the curse of the Dark Mother. Is this something different?
No, this ties into it. The way this thing kills, if you read Crowley gives a death number, basically like what you would call your head shot. And the number that Crowley assigns to this kill number is the number 42. And he says, essentially in his works, that this is what he calls the grand number of the curse. And he associates this number with this entity he calls the Dark Mother. And if you read Crowley, he basically, the closest thing he equates this thing to is, he said, it is one of the most vicious things you'll ever see. He equates it, the closest thing he equates it to is this demonic goddess from the Old Testament called Lilith, who is basically the killer of children. And Crowley says that this is your kill number. And whenever you see these deathly events playing out, the number 77 will always be there, but the number 42 will always be there as well. But there's a little bit of a difference. The number 72 will stand out like a sore thumb. It's almost like this entity is trying to get attention. The number 42 hides. This entity doesn't like to be discovered. This thing is much more surreptitious than 77. He calls it the Dark Mother. It's this very evil, demonic goddess, very vicious. And again, this ties into Crowley's gematria in The Wizard of Oz, because if you're familiar with the number 42, you will know that human beings can only see rainbows or observe rainbows at an angle of 42 degrees. And of course, if you go back to The Wizard of Oz, what is the most famous song that movie generated? And of course, it is Over the Rainbow. So again, this number again syncs to The Wizard of Oz. Interestingly, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this before on a podcast, and I can't tell you where, but I will when the book's out. One of the events, one of the terror events, it was filmed. I can't tell you which one. And actually, if you pause it correctly, this demon actually appears on screen. And you can actually see it. And what makes it even more macabre is the demon actually appears as basically looking like the Wicked Witch of the West. Wow. And it is very, very creepy. And when you see it, you really are staring literally at the face of evil. And it gives me goosebumps even just thinking about it. I'm going to put it in the book. I can't tell you the event. It's not 9/11. I'll tell you that. But there is an event that happened where, and one of the things that I looked at a million times was I wanted to make sure this wasn't doctored video or wasn't fake video or some sort of deep fake or anything like that. And it is not. It is 100% genuine. And this demon appears literally for a split second. Literally for a split second. If you don't know where to look, you'll never see it. But it is by far and away one of the most macabre things I've ever examined and seen in my life.
So based on that, do you think the era that we are currently headed into is being governed by a dark demonic force?
I think the question, if it's demonic, is a little bit more of a subjective. Is it dark? Yes, absolutely. Is it? I will go so far as to say dark and macabre. So yes, demonic. Not quite there yet, but definitely dark and sinister and macabre. I would absolutely say that. And if you read a lot of the works about the people who talk about the age of Aquarius, they validate this. They said it's a very dark age. They said it is essentially an age where people think it's going to be egalitarian, democratic, but it's basically ruled by this dark, evil force. And that does seem to be playing out in real time right now. It's an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, and do you have any idea how long of a cycle this would be?
That's a great question. I've often thought about that. I think, I mean, I'm speculating here. I think that as we get further into Aquarius, this will start to fade off, and once it starts to become more mainstream, I think this will start fading away. But we'll see. That's a speculation. I mean, that's my speculation. I can't. That's me speculating. I can't say that for certain.
Right. Well, I'd like to get into some recent films, some ones that I've enjoyed that you've done some analysis on, starting with Late Night with the Devil. I really enjoyed this movie. Tell us a little bit about what you found in there.
Well, here's what's interesting about Late Night with the Devil is this is one of those movies, and this is something that I talk about again in the books, is there seems to be some things in pop culture that seem to be really carrying this curve forward into pop culture. And this is certainly one of these movies. Longlegs is another one. I mean, if you look at Late Night with the Devil, I mean, it almost looks like it was produced by Aleister Crowley himself. I mean, the movie takes place in the year 1977. If you remember the guy, I mean, we have the numbers, the Crowley numbers are present immediately. I mean, 1977, we have the visions, we have the imagery of the World Trade Center, of course, and 9/11 is, of course, Crowley, if you read his books, he calls 9/11 the supreme ritual, which is basically ushering in the age of Aquarius. And then you have, of course, the guy in the audience who is 42 years old. So we have the number 42. The deceased wife appears 7 times. That's a key number for Crowley as well. Clearly, you will see a Wizard of Oz influence on that movie because, of course, it's filmed in black and white and color. The backstage scenes are black and white, and then the live scenes are in color. That's completely designed to conjure the Wizard of Oz, where Jack Delroy is this Wizard of Oz duplicitous character. So, again, a lot of Wizard of Oz, Aleister Crowley themes and symbolism going on in Late Night with the Devil. I love the movie. I thought it was absolutely great film. By far and away, one of the best films I've seen recently released. Might be getting into the top 10 movies of mine. Certainly Longlegs probably is with Nick Cage, and that's another movie that looks like it was produced by Aleister Crowley as well. I mean, the number 14, of course, with the girls' birthdays, 14 is, of course, 7 plus 7, which is 77. The whole idea of Longlegs, again, comes out of The Wizard of Oz, where the director says that the Longlegs character is the Wizard of Oz, this kind of duplicitous character pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And, of course, who directed Longlegs but the Wizard of Oz himself, Osgood Perkins. Two very good movies. But no, Late Night, I know I got off a little tangent, but no, Late Night with the Devil is a very good movie. Again, just getting away from Crowley, of course, the ritual at the end with Jack, with the devil present and the skeleton present, clearly recalls Skull and Bones, the rituals there. And of course, the movie was released on March 22nd, which is 3/22, Skull and Bones. Of course, Bohemian Grove is mentioned outright, so you don't even have to go there. One of the things that is unique in it, which I really like that they did, is they identified the demon that this guy is into as Abraxas. And that's actually incorrect. Abraxas was what was known as the Great Archon to a Gnostic heretic known as Basilides. And that's corrected in the movie. The one guy, Carmichael Haig, says, "Oh, no. He said, the Abraxas is really the Gnostic interpretation is the correct one, where it's the great archon, it's the showman god, the demiurge, another name for it. And so I really like that. And of course, if you go online and you Google Abraxas, you're going to get the famous image of the god with the rooster head and the two serpent legs. And if you watch the movie very closely at the end, where Jack is clearly making a deal, this is what's insinuated or implied, that he cut a deal at Bohemian Grove for the success that he had, but of course his wife was going to get killed. If you look at the chalice that he drinks out of to like kind of cement the deal, seal the deal, it has the Abraxas image on it. It's very late, and it's put in there very, very subtly, but it's very good imagery to take a look at. If you watch it again, take a look at the chalice that Jack drinks out of at the end. It has the Abraxas image.
Right on. And since you mentioned Long Legs, this is another one I was going to ask you about. I do want to go back and rewatch it because there is a lot in this film to absorb it when it comes to symbolism. But what did you see?
Oh, I love the movie. I mean, this is by far and away one of my favorite films of recent, without question. I mean, it clearly looks like, I mean, the Mika Monroe character, I don't know if I pronounced her name correctly. This is the Lee Harker character. I mean, obviously, looks like she could be Clarice Starling's younger sister or Agent Scully's, first cousin or something. I mean, you will clearly see allusions in there to movies like Seven, The Silence of the Lambs. I mean, every time they go in Longlegs' basement, I'm ready to hear Goodbye Horses by Q Lazarus playing over the scene. One of the things I thought was pretty clever that they did, that again you take another look at, is when Longlegs is approaching Lee's house at the beginning of it, the perspective is from the doll riding shotgun, and the reason is because of the black veil over the eyes. So when you're watching the movie, the actual point of view of the car approaching Lee Harker's home is from the doll's perspective, because you could see the black veil over its eyes. Very creepy. And the other thing, I watched that movie a dozen times, and I just picked up on this the other day, when the mother at the end goes to, is in the house and pulls the knife on the daughter. The knife is split second. It's a blacked curved blade. That is a dagger known as an athema, and that is a dagger used in ceremonial magic and witchcraft. So very, very good point out there. You will notice also in there the number 3 is prevalent. Excuse me. Lee Harker says the number 33. 3 people are murdered at the Camera Farm. 3 people die at the house at the end, with 3 shots being fired. And of course, if you're again familiar with Crowley, 333 is the number for the demon Corazon. So that's another very important entity, which is this very vicious demonic entity. So you almost have an invocation of this demon in the movie. Again, Wizard of Oz. Osgood Perkins directed it. The little girl's name is Ruby Slippers, Ruby Carter. So again, you'll see Wizard of Oz allusions all over the place on this thing. Very good movie. The actual name of the character, Long Legs, actually is lifted from L. Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz novel. And he describes an evil creature with 8 long legs, which is obviously meant to be a giant spider. This is in the novel. It's not in the movie. And if you watch also the movie Long Legs, keep an eye out for the number 8. The number 8 appears numerous times. And again, that's an allusion back to this blurb paragraph from the Wizard of Oz novel with 8 long legs. That's where that comes from, out of the Wizard of Oz book.
Now, going back to the curse for a second, I wanted to ask you if you thought that it's possible that there may be very powerful groups or individuals, adepts that are aware of this curse, that do ritual or some sort of magic to propel it in any way.
Possible, but unlikely. There seems to be it's the closest way I can answer this is it seems to be more of akin to mesmerism, that people are acting perhaps unknowingly with this force guiding them. That's the best way I can describe it. I can tell you this: there is no human being or group of human beings that can encode numbers like this thing does. It's just not humanly possible. And why would you? I mean, this is a supernatural occurrence. This is without question a force coming out of the world of supernatural. Can this thing have unconscious agents here on Earth that are doing its bidding, perhaps unconsciously? Yes, absolutely. I do not disagree with you there. Is this more of a circumstance where it is a group of people who are aware of this and are perpetuating it? Possible. If it is, it's a very small minority, but maybe possible more in the entertainment industry where they have greater control over it. But with things like 9/11 or the Kennedy assassination, I mean, yes, I will agree with you that clearly there was a CIA involvement with JFK. But there's like, if you, even now when you read books about the Kennedy assassination, you'll find the author always harkening back to something like, there's a very dark force at work here. What it is, I don't know what it is, but there is. And this dark force that they're talking about is this curse related to the precession of the equinoxes, but Crowley called it the equinoxes of the gods, by the way. But it is a very dark force. It is incredibly sinister, very macabre. I'm hesitant to go to the word demonic yet, but it's clearly very dark. It's very, very vicious. And can people being used or being manipulated by this thing, perhaps on a conscious, probably more on a subconscious level? Yes, that I would agree with. But is there like a coterie and skull and bones who are, no, I don't, I'm not there yet. Because the reason I say no is there's simply no way humanly possible that people can encode these numbers into these events. It's just impossible.
I agree.
I mean, it would be utterly impossible to do it over. I mean, maybe once, but not over and over and over and over and over
Yes.
again.
There are many of these films and works of art, even literature throughout history that have this, like you said earlier, even predictive programming, symbolism, themes and numbers that are strung together that connect things that seemingly should be impossible to be connected any other way than by some mystical force. And this brings me to the predictive programming, like you mentioned earlier, maybe Mandela effects, these strange things that seem to either change or predict something in the future. What are your thoughts on the force behind this?
So again, it is multi-layered. And again, I believe, as me being a lawyer, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a cookie-cutter answer I can give you. It just depends on the film. I believe my opinion on this has shifted over the last 2 years. My thoughts on it are now that when you're dealing with the 9/11 imagery popping up in pop culture, I believe that this force. This force seems to be using pop culture as a vehicle to continue to spread itself. So I believe this thing this curse syncs with pop culture and vice versa. Because if you look at the event, like Kennedy assassination, and you look at pop culture, a lot of times they mirror each other, and you will find these numbers or symbolisms going on at the same time. And that's even stranger. And another thing that this curse does that's very peculiar, that makes it even stranger, is you will find it predicting itself, where you will find, like, for example, with 9/11, if you look into this, you will see that there are things in 9/11 that anticipate the coronavirus. And same with the death of Princess Diana. You will clearly see around her death, the coronavirus was on its way, basically. So I mean, that's the other thing. It seems to like anticipate itself. And again, one of the great things of this is, again, going back to the Wizard of Oz, is, who was Dorothy Gale, who played her? Well, it was, of course, Judy Garland. Well, what's a garland? Well, corona, a crown. Very, very interesting there. So when it comes to predictive programming in film, I believe some of it is coming out of the world of supernatural. I think some of it is perhaps, where maybe it is a scenario where it's placed in there to anticipate an event. There have been documented evidences of this where certainly the military has placed things into a movie to announce that they are real. And then, of course, you can look at the Carl Jung, Emanuel Swedenborg, the correspondences, where basically they say, as part of the human condition and the collective unconscious, the idea of doing creative things you can incidentally encode future events in there because of the ether. You know, you're just tapping into the ether when you do a creative activity, and you can incidentally predict the future with it. So that has to be taken into consideration. So my experience in looking at it is, it's not a cookie cutter answer I can give you. You have to kind of look at the movie on an individual basis and see what's going on with it. There are, I don't want to give too much away. I mean, clearly there are a lot of things leading up to 9/11. There is something that happened with the Kennedy assassination with a television show that is off the charts strange. That's in the book that I get into. I don't want to give that away just yet. What's funny is that in this television show, not only does it almost predict the assassination of President Kennedy almost exactly, but you will clearly see allusions in there to the coronavirus again. Very, very peculiar. So again, you know, this is the subject of Cinema Symbolism 4. I have been previewing it a little bit. I kind of started talking about it a little more in depth, and I kind of backed off of it. And the reason was I was getting emails from people saying, hey, you know, what book is this in? Book's not out yet. Like I said earlier, the book has one chapter left to write on it, and the conclusion. And then once that's done, then I got to, of course, to edit it, and then I got to format it, and that's no easy feat, I assure you. But I can get it done. So my gut feeling right now is this should probably be out in the spring of 2026 or so. Excellent. And once it comes out, I'll go on and spill my bean, tell you everything you want to know about this.
Yeah. You mentioned JFK assassination a couple of times. I've had some guests and researchers on recently that believe that there may have been a ritual element behind this operation. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if I go so far as to say there is a ritual operation, but again, you will find Crowley's numbers and the Wizard of Oz all over this thing. And again, I mean, just from a practical standpoint, I mean, who allegedly kills John F. Kennedy? The Wizard of Oz, Lee Harvey Oswald. Right. I mean, who dispatches Lee Harvey Oswald, the Ruby Slippers, Jack Ruby? I mean, the John F. Kennedy is killed by 3 shots coming from a 7-story building as he approached Route 77, with the 3 shots coming almost 7 seconds apart. And if you look at Route 77, if you go south, you are at Waco, Texas, and we all know what happened there in the early 90s. And of course, Waco, the Branch Davidian complex, sat on a 77-acre complex. And again, this is just some of the syncs with all this thing. So yeah, I mean, as far as the death curse is concerned, yes, this is the Wizard of Oz is all over this thing. I know I've looked into the ritual element as well. I'm more interested in the Crowley thing than that aspect of it. Because I can
with all of these very esoteric numbers showing up in cinema and events throughout history, this may add to the emerging theory that we are in some sort of simulated reality. I can see where people can correlate that because of repeating numbers seeming like programming in the ether or in our reality. What are your thoughts on the correlations between simulation theory and some of this stuff?
Well, here's what I would say is, I don't know if I would go along with that, because with these numbers, they don't appear throughout history. That's what makes this so strange. It is only up until 1939. Before that, you won't find it. It's only post 1939 when this movie becomes active, and then we begin getting out of Pisces into Aquarius. However, there is one thing that seems to predict this thing out, and it happened in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. I'm not going to disclose what it is, but it is the thing that seals the deal on this. And once this is disclosed, it ends it. I mean, and because it's just too remarkable at that point in time.
Right on.
So again, the curse doesn't seem to really become active until 1939 afterwards, with the precession of the equinox. And again, the reason for that is because of the end of Pisces, the start of Aquarius. So I'm not so sure that it's more of a matrix sort of thing. I think it's more of a supernatural. To me, the end conclusion that I draw out of this is the supernatural is real. This, to me, proves the existence of these supernatural forces, sort of pulling the strings from behind the curtain, as it were, no pun intended. That's my end conclusion.
I'd have to agree. There is something else that seems to be, at the least, pulling strings on our reality, like you said. Let's go back to some movies from our past, some that I really enjoyed that I know you've done some research into, starting with The Shining. You mentioned Stanley Kubrick earlier, of course, one of the masters of symbolism in our modern cinema. Talk a little bit about what you found in The Shining.
So The Shining, there's a lot going on in there. And again, this should be unsurprising because it's Stanley Kubrick. And one of the things, of course, that Kubrick does in that movie is repetition. That whole movie is nothing but is repetition. And the reason he is repeating everything over and over and over and over again is to convey to your subconscious mind that the Overlook Hotel is an Ouroboros. It's a serpent biting its tail. It's a never-ending cycle that keeps repeating. So to convey that, not consciously, but subconsciously, he repeats everything. Characters say things back to each other. Numbers repeat all over the place. And again, this is one of the things that Kubrick does very expertly in The Shining. And I think the movie he gets this from, when it comes to repetition, was a movie that came out a few years earlier in the early 70s called Don't Look Now. And if you look at Kubrick's The Shining and you look at that movie, you will definitely see some parallels with it, with the repetition. And I think that's where Kubrick started to pick up on, hey, let me start using this in my movies. And again, well, let me say that, I take that back. Let me use this in a movie. And he chose The Shining because of the whole idea of the Overlook being basically a broken record, just, skipping and playing itself over and over and over again. And of course, you have the whole concept in there of, this is where Kubrick reveals that he filmed the lunar, the footage of the moon landing. Now, the idea is they actually went to the moon, but they couldn't film there. And of course, this is where Kubrick gives this away with the boy with the, Danny with the Apollo 11 rocket, goes to room 237. Of course, back in the late 70s, early 80s, the moon was 237,000 miles from the Earth. The real smoking gun on this is the movie that Kubrick made before The Shining, which was Barry Lyndon. And Kubrick, when he filmed that, if you're not familiar with that movie, it takes place during the Napoleonic Wars. And Kubrick was obsessed with filming. He was obsessed with a couple things. He was obsessed with bathrooms. If you're familiar with Kubrick's movies, usually the pivotal scenes always take place in a bathroom. And I'm sure Kubrick got that from Alfred Hitchcock. Hitchcock's Psycho was the first movie to depict a flushing toilet. And I'm sure Kubrick picked up on that from Alfred Hitchcock. But going back to Barry Lyndon, one of the things Kubrick also wanted to do was film scenes by candlelight. And of course, you couldn't do it. They don't throw enough light out. If you ever watch a black and white movie or whatever, you will always see an external off-camera lighting source. And a lot of times you'll see this especially in like black and white movies that take place during like the early 19th century or the Victorian era, where they're in a room and there's a candle burning and there's an external lighting source off camera. And you'll see this all the time in the Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce, Sherlock Holmes movies. They blow out the candle and then the light goes off camera, because obviously the candle isn't generating the light source. So they sync it. You see it plain as day. Not knocking it or anything, but Kubrick was obsessed with the idea of filming scenes by candlelight only. Believe it or not, NASA had actually developed a lens that would do this. It needed some tweaking. And Kubrick actually got permission from NASA to use the lenses. And of course, it begs the question, well, why is NASA going to give Stanley Kubrick lenses to film Barry Lyndon with? Of course, the answer is, the question answers itself. He worked for them. He was one of their employees. So again, the smoking gun with the idea of Kubrick being employed by NASA to film the moon landing is Barry Lyndon is your smoking gun on that one. There is also something that I talk about in the new book, and I'm not going to get into it right now, but I forget the actor's name, but the actor who plays what's his name? If you watch The Shining, he's the guy who's sitting at the desk who lets Jack basically be the caretaker. I can't remember. Stuart Ullman. Okay. Stuart Ullman, the actor who plays him, is linked to this as well. Is linked to this idea that Kubrick filmed the moon landing footage. Stuart Ullman. I forget the name of the actor who played him. I'd have to go look that up. But that actor is linked into this as well. So yeah, I mean, the idea of Kubrick filming the moon landing footage doesn't surprise me at all anymore.
Do you think that there was symbolism that connected MK Ultra in any way in this film? I have a friend that recently made a documentary. He speculates that there was a lot of MK Ultra symbolism in this.
I've never looked at it from that angle. I'd have to do some more research into it. But I guess, anything's possible, but I'm not going to comment on it because I never really have looked at it from that angle.
Right on. So moving on from Kubrick, I want to go to a more recent film that I saw you covered that I enjoyed as well, and that's Midsommar. And of course, there's some outright esoteric symbolism throughout the whole film, but what are some of the things that maybe your normal everyday person wouldn't notice?
Well, again, in Midsommar, you have references to The Shining. And the reason you have references to The Shining is to convey the sense of isolation that the characters are experiencing. If you watch the beginning of Midsommar, the approach to the camp, the Haga camp, is filmed from above. And that is harkening back to Jack Torrance at the beginning of The Shining, driving to the Overlook Hotel. That's almost verbatim. I mean, not verbatim. It's almost filmed. The filming of Jack driving his Volkswagen Beetle to the Overlook at the beginning of The Shining mimics, or Midsommar mimics that, imitates that when they're filming the overhead shot of the people going to the Haga. And again, the idea is to convey a sense of isolation. And again, if you fast forward into that movie, the one scene where Danny has the dream and she's sleeping in the bunkhouse, pay attention to her blanket, because the blanket is the carpet pattern from the Overlook Hotel. And again, the idea for that is to convey the sense of isolation. Of course, the isolation of the Torrance family, conveying it to your subconscious mind by placing the carpet on the blanket. Very interesting. Lots going on in Midsommar. If you are familiar with Ari Aster's first movie, or the movie made before it, which is Hereditary, which is another fantastic movie, it revolves around the demon Paimon. You go forward to Midsommar. In Norse mythology, the number 9 is very important. However, if you read the Lesser Key of Solomon, the number 9, the demon Paimon, is the 9th demon listed. So I kind of almost look at Midsommar as a continuing conjuration of Paimon, because if you watch Midsommar, you will see the number 9 appear routinely all over the place in Midsommar. And again, if you're familiar with Ars Goetia, Paimon is the 9th demon listed. So very interested imagery in Midsommar. And again, even with Midsommar, you will find links to the Wizard of Oz, where the girl goes to this mystical land, strange land, to have the Gnostic epiphany, to discover who she is. And she goes with her 3 companions. So again, and they mirror the guys. One is brainless, one is heartless, and one is not courageous. So the 3 companions mirror the 3 from the Wizard of Oz. And of course, Danny, Dorothy, similar name. Very interesting. I love Midsommar. I haven't seen any Ari Aster's movies other than Hereditary and Midsommar. I know he's made a couple, but I haven't seen them. But those 2 I absolutely love. Those are fantastic.
Yeah, I liked Hereditary too. What else did you see in that film?
Lots of allusions to The Exorcist, and that should be unsurprising because, of course, both movies are about demonic possession. So again, in Hereditary, you will see lots of allusions to The Exorcist. The most common one is in the attic, is the headless mannequin. Of course, it ties into the movie because Paimon was obsessed with decapitated heads. But if you go back and watch The Exorcist, Chris McNeil's attic is also a headless mannequin. And again, that's a play that's drawing a one from the other. So again, lots of allusions to The Exorcist in Hereditary.
There's a couple of more films I want to cover. Joker. Talk a little bit about some symbolism in here.
Right. Well, Joker is a very good movie. I haven't seen the second one, but I heard it wasn't very good. But a Joker is all about alchemical transitioning, and you'll find this in movies like Black Swan, The Shining, and Joker, where it's a shift from a change. It's alchemical. It's a change of one character into another character, and when that happens on screen, pay attention to some color schemes and things going on. Alchemy has symbolic colors. It's red, white, black, and yellow, and those will routinely appear. Very dark movie, Joker. A lot of allusions to John Wayne Gacy, who, of course, also dressed up as a clown, the famous serial killer or infamous serial killer. Gacy, of course, was Pogo the Clown. And if you look at his Pogo makeup mirrors or is clearly the inspiration of the Joker's makeup. And it's interesting because psychologists have said that Gacy's clown makeup was subconscious. It was designed to resemble a human skull. And it was likely subconsciously done by Gacy just to terrorize children, not to entertain them. And of course, if you watch Joker, the nightclub or the comedy club that Arthur Fleck performs in is, of course, Pogo's. And Pogo the Clown was, of course, John Wayne Gacy's one of his alter clown egos. So again, very dark movie there with Joker. I like that very much.
We got just a few minutes left. I know that you have to call it a hard stop at an hour, but tell us a little bit about what you saw in Dark City. This is another great movie.
Oh, Dark City is really, it's funny because if Neo Anderson hadn't come along in The Matrix, we'd probably all be talking about Dark City. Dark City is an incredibly Gnostic movie. I mean, it's almost The Matrix. Yeah. It's the same movie. I mean, and it's, again, has to do with, it's a Gnostic film. It has the false reality in it. It has the archons in it, which are, of course, all the strangers. These in The Matrix are the agents. Mr. Book is clearly the great archon of Basilides, the demiurge. We get the architect. We don't get him until part 2 of The Matrix. So, yeah, Dark City is a great movie. And what's interesting about Dark City is after they got done making it, they actually used some of the set design, not the set design, the actual set, especially the rooftop set, in The Matrix movie. At the end of Dark City, when he's on the rooftop, and I think the spiral staircase as well, that you will find in The Matrix, but it's the same set design. It's the exact same set. So, yeah, I mean, those two movies are interlinked. But, yeah, when you're dealing with Dark City, again, that's one of those premier Gnostic movies that started popping up in the late 1990s from when we were leaving the 20th century and going into the 21st century. At the turnover of the millennium, there was this slate of Gnostic movies came out. I don't know if it was conscious or not,
right.
intentional or not, but there was this slate of Gnostic movies that hit in the late 90s, early 2000s. Dark City is one of them. And then Mouth of Madness, The Matrix, Truman Show, Donnie Darko, Vanilla Sky, Existenz. These are all movies with this Gnostic theme of the false reality of Valentinus, you know, the demiurge, a creator, the archons coming to consciousness of the false reality. And again, you know, coming to know them, know thyself. You will all find that going on in the late 90s, early 2000s. And again, I don't know if that was intentionally done, but it is there without
Well, it's
question.
very interesting how you see many people, especially in the past few years, revisiting Gnostic concepts and even immersing themselves in Gnostic beliefs in our modern times. I wonder if this was some sort of, again, predictive programming to the collective consciousness that showed where we would be headed in the future?
Possibly. I mean, that's debatable, but possible. But regardless, there is, I mean, that slate of Gnostic movies that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, it is there, and it is without question that it didn't happen.
Without giving away too much, your book's going to be, you said, coming out next year sometime. What are some other films that people can look for that you're going to be covering?
So I did, very good question. So the main thrust of the book, without question, is The Wizard of Oz. Some of the other movies that I took on is The Batman with Robert Pattinson. I had started the new Halloween movies, the Halloween 2018 in the last book. So I concluded those with Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. They will be in there. Of course, Late Night with the Devil is in there. Of course, the movie Late Night with the Devil, Long Legs, of course, and one of the greatest Gnostic movies to be released in modern times, of late. We talked about this slate of Gnostic movies from the late 90s, early 2000s. One of the great Gnostic movies that was recently released in the last couple years. Very Kubrickian. Of course, I'm referring to Barbie, an incredibly Gnostic movie.
Wow. Was not expecting you to say that one.
Very, very, very Gnostic, and a remake of The Wizard of Oz, I might add.
Interesting. Well, Robert, this was great. We'll definitely have to have you back on sooner this time. Before you go, remind the audience the best way to find your books and more information about you.
Well, thank you again for having me on Forbidden Knowledge News. It was my pleasure to be here. And again, when the book comes out or anytime you want to have me on, it's, again, my pleasure to be with you and do this podcast with you. Again, for information about me, and the books are available on all the major online sites like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million. If you want more information about me and to buy the books, just go to my website. Again, it's an easy page to navigate, and it's my name. It's www.robertwsullivan4.com, the number Robert W. Sullivan, 2 L's, 4.com. Again, www.robertwsullivan4.com. And again, thank you for having me on. It was my pleasure to be here, and I look forward to returning.
Definitely. Love to do it again. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow. We'll see you then.